Tonight we're sitting with author Tom Abrams and with narrator who's been coined the voice of the apocalypse, Kevin Pierce. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
And it is Abrams, right? You know, it's not Abrahams, it's Abrams.
It is Abrams. It's spelled cool. Abrahams, but it's pronounced Abrams.
Yeah, and I say it both ways in my head, so I have to convince myself it's one or the other.
So do I. It's fine.
All right. Well, guys, welcome to the show. We always start off with a brief introduction. So let's start with you, Tom. Give us a short introduction of yourself.
Sure. So I write action adventure, political thrillers, and of course, post-apocalyptic dystopian fiction that I know you all have listened to and been kind enough to put up there for people to see. I'm a hybrid author, so I have some books that are traditionally published, but a lot of them are independently published, and all of the audiobooks to date are voiced by a singular person, and that's Kevin Pierce. On my day job, I'm a TV reporter. I've done it for 25 years. I cover a lot of politics, but nationally, statewide, locally. So, and I covered a lot of car wrecks. So it's one extreme or the other.
You said politics, or you said car wrecks and car wrecks, right? I mean,
I said politics. Well, yeah, I joke. Very good. I joke that writing political thrillers and writing about the apocalypse are essentially the same genre.
One's just further along, right? I mean, one's just
different stages.
Yeah,
right.
One's reality and one's fiction.
Which is which?
Good question. Good question. Right. They seem to get closer together. In fact, if I wrote what's happened in the last few years politically, if I wrote it as a political thriller, nobody would buy it. Everybody would say it was too far-fetched.
Too far-fetched. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right, then, Kevin, same goes for you. Give us your elevator pitch.
Yeah, so elevator pitch is I'm an audiobook narrator, which means if Tom had written down what he just said, I would have read it for him.
Oh, you totally should have done that. That's
in fact, the rest of the interview will be that way. I'm gonna instant message things, and Kevin's just gonna speak on my behalf.
But yeah, I spend a lot of my time, you mentioned, in the post-apocalyptic genre, and sort of the other portion is in true crime, and I haven't really found the link between those two things yet. But that's where I spend my days.
Yeah, I've listened to quite a few, and I don't think I've listened to any of the true crimes. And I thought about that the other day when I realized that was a majority of your titles outside of post-apocalyptic.
We'll talk about that sometime.
I haven't either, and I was looking you up before this just to see how many, which one was the leader, and I think it's post-apocalyptic.
It is by far.
Just by a little bit, according to Audible and according to the name of Kevin Pierce, because everybody has a second name, it seems like, so that they don't want to talk about.
It's actually a sneaky question later that I don't even want to. Because what I want to know is if Kevin Pierce has a pseudonym that does romance. That's
If I did, it would be age appropriate. It'd be Bran Muffin.
Like the retirement community.
I thought it would be at least 5 minutes before this went off the rails, and
you haven't watched enough episodes. So Tom, you kind of already said it. You have 16 titles together. It's almost every book you've written. I think you have a couple. I know you've got a couple political thrillers you and I have talked about before. How did it start, and what drew you two together, and how do you keep coming together again?
Well, I got really lucky with the book Home, which was the first full-length post-apocalyptic book that I wrote. It's kind of a Western themed apocalyptic book. All of them really I try to do a little bit of a different twist so that it's not just straight up post-apocalyptic. And I published it not thinking anything really would happen, and it kind of took off. And I had a lot of people suddenly contacting me asking about the audio, and one person stood out, and that was Kevin. I think he had done Franklin Horton's Borrowed World. And Frank, that's a fantastic book. The audio book, I think, still probably outsells everything I've written all by itself. And Kevin like volunteered to send me a sample. I'd already listened to his voice on Borrowed World, but when I heard him reading what I'd written, I was like, yeah, that nobody else. I'm not interested. I had traditional offers, and I was not interested. I wanted Kevin to do it, and the rest is history. I think that was almost 3 years ago, I think.
So did he reach out to you directly and say, I'm interested, or was it?
Yeah, he sent me an email and said, hey, here's who I am. And I think I remember this correctly. You were in TV news too, Kevin, right?
I was, yes.
And
yes.
so there was that connection. He lives in Florida. I went to UF. He didn't hold that against me. And so, I liked his approach. I liked his voice. And I think particularly for that series, when I kind of envisioned a voice in my head as to how it would sound, it was exactly what I wanted, and people have responded. I mean, that series still, I'll be straight up and honest. Part of the reason we haven't done a box set with it is because it's just still sells so well. People really connect with Marcus Battle, and Kevin is the voice of Marcus Battle. And,
sure.
And I get asked almost every day from somebody, is there going to be another book? Is there going to be another book? I haven't decided yet, but the longer it goes, the more I think there probably will be. So
what Tom's not saying is that I'm one of the people that asks, is there going to be another book? Is there going to be another book? And sometimes in a novel, how you'll get 2 points of view of the same event. Let me give you a different point of view of the event of us meeting. I find out that this book, Tom I don't know, book I don't know, is seeking a narrator, or is in need of a narrator. I read 2 pages, and I am so convinced I have to do this book, and I'm so worried that I'm too late because I don't know at what point I'm joining this hunt. And so I, dash off this email. It's like, I got to do your book. I got to do your book. Please let me do your book. Please, please, please. So his recollection is a little different than mine. There was panic on my side that it might slip past me. But reading about Mark's Battle, the character in the book, I had to do this book. I don't know what I would have done had he said no. I still would have ended up doing the book, but there would have been blood and air travel and shovels and box cutters involved, and so it worked out. It worked out very well, but it was far less cool and calm than Tom recalls on my end, anyway.
No, I mean, I was so glad that he reached out, and I think the thing about it is that book hit out of nowhere after about a week. And the algorithms kicked in or something, or Amazon started sending out emails. I have no idea. And it stayed at #1 in post-apocalyptic and dystopian for like 6 weeks. And so that's why I was getting all this interest from people who wanted to know about it. And because originally I wasn't even thinking about audio. I had gotten out of self-publishing. I had books with a traditional publisher and had decided I'm going to go that route. And then my wife and my author friend Murray McDonald convinced me to try indie again, and the landscape was very, very different. But I'm so glad I did. It's changed everything.
Excellent. So, did you do indie then traditional then indie again? Is that the course of it?
Yeah, I had I self-published Sedition, which was my first novel, political thriller, and it got picked up by Post Hill Press, and then they signed me to. I think it was a total of 5 books. I still have 3 books with them. I have the Allegiance series still with them, but I bought back Sedition and Intention, which is the second book in that 2-book series, and Kevin has voiced those also. And so, I like having a mix of both, because I love Amazon. They've been fantastic. They've changed the way we do things. But I don't want to have, even though I'm in KU, I don't have everything there. So That's why I also want to have some traditional stuff out there.
That makes sense. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I didn't know if it was like traditional first. I didn't realize it was kind of, and then you got picked up via the book, which makes sense. So.
Right.
So I actually flipped around because you were kind of just talking about it. So, and you kind of mentioned it already that, you hear his voice. Now, when you're writing the new books, any new book you're coming up, any new series, especially any Marcus Battle books while you're writing them, did you write the second, third, and fourth ones in his voice at all? Like, did it kind of change? Did it change the book at all because of his narration style, or was it just kind of, it fit so well it didn't really matter?
The only character I gave consideration to was Lou, and ended up doing an entire book about her.
Yep.
Because I was thinking, okay, I know, Kevin has done women's voices, but how's he going to do with an 8, 9, 10-year-old girl? Yeah. But then I thought, he did Sir Spencer, who's British. He'll be fine. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I don't hear the voices in my head necessarily. I see everything I'm writing as a scene. And so Kevin might be able to appreciate this. When I read scripts for work, I was taught in journalism school to read out loud when I'm writing. And when I'm going over the script, I read it out loud so I know how it hears, because TV is an audio and visual medium. So when I'm writing a book, oftentimes I find myself, when I'm writing dialogue, not when I'm writing the scene, but dialogue, I speak it out loud. So it's in my voice, actually, which is no one wants to hear.
It's funny you said that, because I was going to sneak a question in about that. I was going to say, did you ever consider doing it yourself, because you do talk and you do, work in a similar medium? So I just didn't know if it was ever
next question, Brian. Next question.
Funny. For about a half
not
second.
Anymore.
I'm not, I'm not an actor in any way. I don't think I could bring the depth to it that Kevin does. So I think I'd read every character the same, and Lou would sound like a 47-year-old guy.
Don't worry, Kevin. If he doesn't use you for another book, I'll boycott him. So it's fine.
It's a package deal.
No, and it's funny, when I actually picked up the book that was Lou's story, I remember going into it not being worried, because I know Kevin's a fantastic narrator. I was just like, how is this going to work? And I know he'd voiced Lou as in the other story, so it wasn't like she was a brand new character either. So it made sense because he already did her voice. But I thought he did a fantastic job with it for having a book that was from a pretty badass, like 9, 10-year-old. But I think that gave her the edge too. She had a little bit of an edge because she was like her whole story.
Yeah.
Kevin, how was doing that one, by the way?
It was fabulous because I knew her already.
Right.
It might have been harder had that been, first glance, because I wouldn't have known how old at heart she was. And that helped. It helped a lot. That it's a little girl's body, but this is an old soul here that we're talking to.
Oh, for sure. That was why when we first meet her and you kind of find out a little bit of her backstory, and then obviously that full book was a lot more of her backstory, you realize what age she is mentally, and she's not a little girl by any means.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, in the apocalypse, right? I mean, if something like that happens, if you're forced into that sort of situation, a child is not going to be a child anymore. They lose their childhood.
For sure.
And she's read a library's worth of books.
Yeah.
And she can throw edged weapons, better than anyone you've ever met, and can give the sarcastic back and forth with anybody. So she's an old soul.
The library scenes in that book really hit me because I knew that backstory a little bit. I think it was mentioned in the book before, but actually, like when she gets there and realizes how much she can learn, it was like one of those moments I actually stopped reading. I'm like, all right, that was really cool. I got to take a minute. Like that was a really cool scene. So, and it was both. It was the performance plus the writing. So you can't. It doesn't happen often, but every once in a while I have to stop a book, and that was one of the times.
And for a good reason, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I didn't stop and never pick it up again. Paul's trying to turn me into this book snob over here, and I don't do that too often. But
you did it to yourself, man.
I meant to ask Paul, how are your 5 Thanksgivings?
I had 5, huh? No, not 5. I had 2. there's just one was, more traditional. The other one,
worth 5.
and then the other one was Misfits of Thanksgiving Past.
That's how you characterize it. I heard that.
I don't know how else to say, because it's just all these people that I have no idea who most of them are. It's in my grandpa's house. It was amazing. Yeah, there's probably 50 to 60 people there this year, and it was amazing. My uncle cooked everything, because that's what he lives for, is holiday cooking. And I think he had a ham and a turkey and everything else to go along with it, and it was a blast. And it's really funny. I hear all these horror stories about family gatherings and drama. I've never seen that in my family, other than I had a cousin once pass out on the front porch. That's as bad as it got,
And the drama was who gets to pick him up. It had nothing to do with anything.
We just left him. I mean, what you do
He's still there.
Roll him out of the way.
Roll him onto his side so he doesn't hurt himself.
Yeah. So it was a good time, a lot of work traveling around a little bit, but it was a lot of fun.
Don't let him do this, Paul. He's going to interview us. You realize this, right?
That's fine.
He just did it.
That's what happens. Hey, at least
how did you get into audiobook reviewing, Paul?
Please do all these, because I'm trying to get Paul to do a reverse episode where I interview him. He does not want to let me do it.
That happens in conversations. Like I will inadvertently kind of just slip into. I have a very relaxed interviewing style, and so just conversations that I'm having with people that I meet or whatever, they turn into interviews, and I don't even intend it that way. But I have found out people really like talking about themselves, so they leave the conversation thinking what a great guy I am because I listen to them talk about themselves.
Kevin, you have almost 400 titles on Audible. How in the world did you get into audiobook narrating?
I came out of radio and television broadcasting, and had been doing not this kind of voice work, but commercials, and I guess the closest thing related would be like documentaries and long form film narration. And the opportunity came one day to audition for an audiobook. And I tried to get in probably 5 or 10 years earlier, and was just told there is no entry into the field. There are people who are already doing it, and they will be the people who will continue doing it, because they're not looking for anybody new. Prior to Amazon's successful indie push with Kindle, and then I think even 5 years later I tried again, and I swear I talked to the same person who remembered talking to me some years earlier and said, "Didn't we talk?" I know you can't do this. There's no path in. So this would have been 2012. There was a call for auditions from studios all across the country. Audible had employed a number of studios to get a large number of books produced at the end of 2012. That's something I've always wanted to do, and did 1, did 2, did 3, did 4, and here we are, 2018. That's about exactly how it went.
Wow. And 400 titles in 6 years, that's a lot, right?
It is.
Okay. Sounds like a lot to me.
It seems like the right number to me.
Stuck you right in then, I guess.
I can't think of many I wouldn't have done, or that many more I would have added. So, it's what I do full time. It's what a lot of us do full time. And at full time, it's a book or so, a book and a little bit more a week.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
I was waiting for him to say a day, Paul, and I was just going to be like,
no,
we can't.
No. I mean,
we have to edit that out. You're gonna make everybody else feel like crap. So
no, I'm not super producer by any means in terms of quantity. there's a good number of colleagues of mine, and we produce pretty similar to the same amount, and it ends up being, a book and some a week, and then you stretch it with, if you're in a really crunchy time, we can work weekends, and if it's in a little less crunchy time, you can have weekends off. Might even get a Friday off. And you're really, really fortunate.
I really like non-crunchy times myself.
Yeah. I think Paul and I are coming up on non-crunchy times here.
The crunchy times are good though too. Those are good.
They are.
I like having too much to do.
What happened?
I like having to say I can fit that in. Right. I can do that.
Yeah, I can see Brian doing that with a podcast about beer.
Oh yeah.
Just overcommit yourself a little bit.
Yeah, that's Paul and I are pretty much known for doing that. It's like, oh, what do you do? Because I also write a beer blog, and that's how I started. I actually started writing a beer blog, and I was reading the one day I was listening to The Martian, and I was like, oh, I already review the books. It's not that hard. It's not that much different to review the books. So I just made like books.beergodblog.com because my blog was that, and I was like, oh, it won't last. Maybe I won't do it for a while, and then I read like a couple more books, and I just kept getting more, and it just kind of stuck. And then I bought the full URL and kept the old email for the old email's sake. Now it's kind of the older one, and when Chinese sellers from Amazon try and contact me, they contact that, not my good email. But yeah, and then Paul and I had an interview, and a couple days later we were doing interviews with other people, and if somebody called me tomorrow and said, hey, you want to talk about beer, I'd say hell yeah. So
I can fit you in. I can find a way.
Yeah, there's a couple. I think it's the Audiobook Speakeasy. He opens the series, but opens every episode by saying, "What are you drinking right now?" And he usually has some kind of cocktail. But a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm drinking this specific beer from this place." So I've listened to a couple that are really good though. But he always starts it like that, and it's pretty interesting. And I wouldn't do that to steal that from him, but I would love to chat beer with people just as much as I like to chat books.
All right. Well, let's see. Kevin, how do you feel about being coined the voice of the apocalypse?
I had somebody ask that question with just one twist. They said, how do you avoid being pigeonholed as the voice of the apocalypse? And I said, well, I think pigeonholed is what you call it when you don't like what they're saying about you. I'll take voice of the apocalypse. Yeah, that's a very positive thing. I think I'll take that, and surely by quantity, probably maybe deserve it. But yeah, I spend a lot of time there, and it's a place I'm very comfortable.
So with a kind of a follow-up to that, with mostly doing post-apocalypse and true crime, I mean, to me, true crime, that's going to be some pretty heinous stuff. And then the apocalypse, which is, again, some pretty heinous stuff. Do you ever think about good things?
Who hurt you?
They both do have a certain amount of. I was trying to figure out what the parallel might be, and they both have a certain amount of heavy to them. Maybe a certain amount of sad, even, because there's a lot in true crime specifically. There's a ton of it's just really sad, and I apparently can do that well. So here we go. And Paul, in answer to the question, most of the post-apocalyptic things, no, I'm not left with a horrific feeling. I will be left with one from a scene or two where it's like, boy, that scene's over, and go, whoo, wow, whoa. and my hope is that you on the other end have that same feeling. You finish the scene and say, okay, well, that's a good place to stop for the day. We'll pick up there tomorrow. That's fine.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, it's definitely
and the true crime is the same way. you know, a lot of it's procedural police work going on, and you get through that quite fine. But then you come to, you know, where somebody realizes that their loved one isn't coming back, and there's that to deal with, and I'll probably stop after that for the day. So yeah, there are elements of it, but in the overall not. And I can think in several of Tom's books, this comes true. Those things that I have in common with the story, that I have a wife, I have a son, I have a daughter, and something happens to the wife or the son or the daughter, and I can find myself diving very deep down a hole of, which I hope serves the story well. You know, yes. that when you hear it, you are left saying, "Wow, that was harsh."
That hit a little too close to home, and you can usually tell.
Yeah, the beginning of Rising, which is book 4. I see the disgust on your face. The beginning of Rising, without giving it away, completely changes the next 3 books. And I had a couple people write me and say they just couldn't read anymore. And I get it. But I felt like I had written the first 3 books and I was done, but the demand was there. So after writing the Spaceman Chronicles, I came back to it and wrote Rising. And I thought, if I'm going to go into this, something dramatic and shocking has to start it. And I got more favorable than not. I got a lot of, holy cow, why did you put him through that stuff? But you know, that was it was not easy to write. And I played with whether or not to leave somebody alive, and decided, nope, I'm starting fresh. And so it was not easy to do that. And so it's probably the most virulent reaction I've gotten from readers. But I mean, if you write something that makes people that angry, I guess it was pretty good.
That's where Lou was introduced too, right?
Yeah, Lou was introduced pages later, and I had the idea for Lou.
That story, though. Right?
Yeah, it was that book. Yeah, and so I had the idea for Lou, and that was part of the reason that I didn't leave somebody alive that I thought about leaving alive. So
I think that was I'm reading through my review. I think that was my least favorite, and I think you struck that chord with me.
Yeah, you called it a dark revenge tale or something like that.
Dark and gloomy. Wow, I can't believe you remember that. A dark and gloomy revenge.
That's the thing, is he remembered it, Brian.
have you not seen Tom's sleeve of tattoos?
Yeah, it says dark. It's almost like you guys have seen Memento. Yeah. It's just in case I forget.
Now I got to go see. I make sure I said nice things about the other.
No. I'm kidding.
It's awesome.
No, I mean it was a dark book, but to get back into the character, I kind of felt like I had to. So.
No, I totally follow, and it's funny because they're the times that Kevin's talking about when he stops. Now I'm a little curious if a few of them have been the same times that I've had to just walk away for a little bit.
They are.
It's just probably. You can. I think it's because Tom's trying to write the emotion, and then Kevin feels the emotion and acts the emotion into it. And then as a listener, as a reader, you feel both sides of it, and it's like, oof. All right, give me a few.
Well, so there's actually a scene in the book that is that just released on Kindle, and Kevin has finished, and I'm hoping is already available or should be any moment now. Affliction. Mm-hmm. I think it might be the first or second time where Kevin's written me a note about a particular scene. Does this fall into that category?
The note is like, you just killed me. It's like, whoa, wow.
And I think it was like, it's a long section of the book. I think you said it was like an hour-long chapter, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's actually cut in half because when I wrote it, I just kept going, And then I realized that it was just this like ridiculously, it was almost like a quarter of the book. And so I had to then separate it. Because, you know, in that series, you get the vantage point of different characters. And so so you come back and forth to different characters. And I had to basically, I think it's with Danny, I had to separate it and come back to it later. Because it was just, I think when I was writing it, I was so into it, I just kept going. So, and it was good that Kevin felt that way about it, because that tells me something about maybe how effective it is. I don't know. We'll find out when people don't buy it.
Tom and I love it.
Well, I can't wait to get my hands on it. I already bought the ebook.
It's 2 thumbs up. Tom and I love it. 2 thumbs up.
Nice.
That should be every review.
Right.
So speaking of the Alt-Apocalypse series, so I've been championing it on a lot of these episodes, I think at least 3 times, if not more now. Definitely more in the weeks. Yeah, definitely more in the weeks coming up to it. And you dropped, it's Affliction, right? That's the new one? You dropped that. I think when we're recording this, it was only a couple days ago. And I had to buy the Kindle version too. I'm going to get the audiobook, obviously, but I had to have it because usually those scenes that we were just talking about, I have to look up and like reread them in my own voice too, just to be like, okay, did it get me? Was it just Kevin? Was it just, it's not, but Kevin definitely adds to it. But where did the idea come from, and why do you think makes it special? Like, what do you think about it makes it special?
Sure. So I'll get to that, but getting back to the tattoo, I was standing outside of the hotel at Bouchercon, right in Florida, and I had just had coffee, I think, with Jack Carr, the guy who wrote Terminal List, and I step outside and I noticed that Kevin has sent me this. Hey, you got to listen to this. So I listened to you guys talking about Kevin and then Alt-Apocalypse, and Paul said, "Yeah, I saw the description. I was like, you can't do this," and so that's on my left arm. You can't do this. So just so you know, I have a list with names too, just like Terminal List. No, so the idea is, as a writer, you know, and I think probably as a reader, as a listener, you know, you don't want to always do the same thing. You want to mix it up. And I love writing dystopian post-apocalyptic stories. But I don't always I'd written so much Marcus Battle, I kind of wanted to break from that. So then I came up with this idea for Spaceman, and I'd written that. And I was thinking, okay, what can I do that's a little different? And I decided that what happens if and I'd been listening to some, well, I don't want to say what I've been listening to because that'll give it away. But I'd been listening to some different genres and had this idea for, well, what if you took the same characters and put them through different scenarios? How would they react? You know, some people are going to be better prepared for one kind of disaster, but they're not in another. I wanted to avoid having the military superhero that Marcus Battle is, because everybody does that. And it's incredibly popular. I wish I'd come up with someone else like Marcus Battle, because, you know, I mean, that really sells in the genre. I'd done, a high school physics teacher with Pilgrimage. I did, an astronaut. So I wanted just regular people and put them in weird circumstances. And so that's where the idea came from. So, you have good guys, bad guys, older people, young people, people who have connections. And as you learn, and actually somebody at Amazon, I was kind of pitching this idea to somebody at Amazon as we were talking about it. And they kind of said, it would be really cool if you had this thread that connected all of them.
I was just thinking that, is there some thread that can connect them? You know, and I've noticed it as I've read 3 of them. I think it's 3.
Yes. And you'll see in book 4, and I think Kevin noticed this too, that you really begin to get a sense that there's something nefarious going on, and it ties everything together. You don't find out exactly what it is, but you begin to get this hint. And there are going to be, at least right now, there'll be 3 more, and it'll be kind of it'll tie up at the end what that thing is and why all of this has happened, and why Ellen Chang dies at the beginning of every book viciously.
So tell me what all, if you know what all 6 of them are already, tell me what all 6 of the issues that are plaguing these characters are.
Oh, okay. Well, so the first one was Ash, right? Well, so it's actually the letters for the books spell out alt-apoc. So the first one is Ash.
I didn't even notice that.
The second one is lit, which is urban and wildfires, which actually, I've been very reluctant to promote, because right when the book came out, there were wildfires. Right when Affliction's coming out, there were wildfires. Torrent happened. We released the week that a storm was bearing down on Louisiana, and that book takes place in Louisiana. So I didn't really want to promote that book. And
maybe that's the story, Tom, is that what you write about
with Affliction, let's hope not. So Affliction is a plague that starts in homeless camps. My dad actually kind of gave me the idea for that. He sent me an article about disease in homeless camps in California, and most of the book takes place in California. So that's where that idea came from. The next one is Polar. I haven't started writing it yet, but it'll be out probably spring-ish, and that's, it's cold. And there's a little hint of that at the end. There's just a couple lines that hint at that at the end of Affliction. And then one of them is going to be an earthquake, and one of them is going to be zombie-ish.
That's right. I do remember you talking about.
Yeah, not zombies per se, but something akin to that. Because I don't want to. There are people who love post-apocalyptic who don't like zombies, and I don't want to lose those readers. Whereas I think people who like reading zombie books will read post-apocalyptic books without zombies. So it'll be zombie-ish. But those are the 3 that I have remaining.
If you haven't seen it, I would recommend you watch 28 Days Later.
Oh, I have.
I fought people for like 10 years that was not a zombie movie, because it's not. But it is, because if it is genre specific, it is very like they do the same things, but it starts as a disease, and it's not really this, they're not.
And they're fast.
They're very fast. Yeah.
They don't lumber. So
yeah. So, but yeah, that's what makes I think you write it when you're describing the books.
In the foreword, yep.
Yes,
yeah.
In the foreword, yes. That I wanted to know if Kevin rereads it every time, or if he just steals the old one and just.
Oh, you pay way too much attention.
I want to know that too.
Good answer.
Perfect long sip of water at that point. Well, for Polar, you can call Paul or I at any point. We both live in pretty cold areas most of the year.
I'll do that. Yes. And Paul will say, "You can't do that.
You can't do it. What he's doing, you can't do, but it's been done. Check it out. I think the idea is fantastic. I mean, I can't believe people haven't done it yet. And I see the potential for other people to do the same type of thing, with the same characters and everything, which it just fascinates me. So
in my head, it's kind of like when you're a kid and you're reading the choose your own adventure books. Yes. And the things keep happening, but different because you're like, oh, I went to page 83 instead of page 22, and different things happen to the same characters. And if you read the whole book end to end, all the different stories, it's pretty much what I think this is, obviously in novel length form.
Well, and I swear Brian and I have not talked about this, but that was one of the idea, like when it was germinating in my head, right? Because I read Hardy Boys Choose Your Own Adventure. I read, Louis L'Amour. I read, voraciously as a kid. I love Choose Your Own Adventures. And I would go back, I don't know, if you read them, I'd go back and I'd pick the other option, and I'd read the whole thing cover to cover.
You keep your thumb on it and see which option is better sometimes too.
Exactly. And frequently I'd get to the end and I'd be like, you can't do that.
Quote Paul Stokes.
I'm getting a T-shirt. Hang on, T-shirt design company. Call tomorrow.
I'm thinking maybe I have a quote at the beginning of every book that's relevant to the story. I'm thinking maybe for Polar it might be, you can't do that. It might be.
Oh my god!
How awesome would that be? He'd have to give it 5 stars.
But that's what his title has to be too. You can't do this.
Yeah.
5 stars. You can't do that.
Awesome. So, it's different, and I get that when he says you can't do that, and it's an unusual concept, and it's like I do think that people are just now maybe in book 3 and 4 beginning to get it. Like my wife said to me, and I think she's right. She said, do you think people are going to get this? Are they going to understand, what it is you're trying to do? Because it is kind of esoteric, and it's not straightforward. And there are hints about things that you're not going to catch in book 1 or 2 unless you go back and read them after you read 3 and 4. So
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking I'm going to finish the whole thing and have to go back and reread them all, because it's like watching Fight Club where you finish it and you're like, wait,
all
what?
the things you missed, right?
Because there are, especially like that one, he gets in the bus and he pays for 1 fare. You're like, oh, wait, really? You watch it again, you're like, there it is, right there. It's right in front of my face the whole time.
So, but it's been fun writing it, and I will say another reason that I did it, okay, is because as an author, and I'm sure this is probably true as a listener and as a narrator, sometimes you get tired of the same storyline. So, that was part of the reason I did at the beginning of Rising what I did, because I wanted to shake it up. I was a little tired of the storyline. I wanted to shift it, right? So this way I'm taking characters who are familiar, who I know and I like or dislike, but the story is new every time, and so
Absolutely.
for me, it's fresh. And so it's like writing a new book, but it's easier because I understand the characters. And I would imagine narrating it's like that too.
It is, and it's the big difference that I note is that it's not as if some amount of time has passed and therefore we're in this new adventure. It's no, let's back right up to where we were and let's start another new adventure. And through the days or weeks in the storyline, that's book 2. Time for book 3. Yeah, let's go right back to the beginning and let's start it again. And I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it.
So your next series just needs to be called "You Can't Do That Apocalypse."
I like that. That you can't do that apocalypse, and it's all the things that you can't do in an apocalypse.
Yes.
Like he made a phone call that went through, but there was no cell tower.
I like the way this is going.
He drank a cold beer, and yet there's no refrigerator.
Yeah, turned on the light. For some reason, it worked. Yeah, that's right. There you go.
He cooked his meal without any gas or electric. I don't know how it happened. No open flame.
Stopped into an abandoned home, opened the refrigerator, and there was a steak there, perfectly cool, and
it was cooked
at the exact right temperature.
He looked outside. There was a tractor trailer driving his food to the Walmart. I mean, how does this even happen?
I do want to say what you guys do to promote books, especially in independent authors and narrators, is fantastic. I mean, it really is. And I know a lot of other authors feel that way. To have people who just take their own time and to promote work that otherwise might not get seen or heard. I think I speak for a lot of other people in thanking you guys for that.
Thank you
so much. And
we appreciate what you guys do.
We do it because we love what you guys are doing.
Yep.
And it drives us to do what we're doing about it. So, I mean, really, thank you.
You get lucky with us sometimes. I'm sure I've said it at least once, where we don't ask you when's the next book coming out all the time. Not all the time. Sometimes.
Yeah, it's out. It just came out.
Sometimes with Kevin, I'm like, no, stop it. No, stop releasing these books I want to listen to. Stop it.
Yeah, I mean, nice. By the way, that's a nice ad placement on that mug, Kevin.
It's backwards though, isn't it? Yeah.
No, it's good.
It's good.
It's perfect.
It's good. But I swear, on Facebook, it's like almost every day, Kevin's got, here's a new release, and then the next, I swear, I've my Facebook feed will refresh, and he's got another new book out. Yeah.
Some days it's 3. I mean, it's
Sometimes things get backed up in the chain a little bit, and then they come out like plop plop plop, and then there's a 2-week period that goes by that nothing.
Oh, 2 weeks.
That's a long time waiting for a book.
Paul can read like 30 books in that time.
I wish.
Yeah, I didn't say finish. I said read.
Oh, all right. Listen to half.
Yep.
That was pretty good.
I'm done.
But then you guys, after you read a book, after you listen to a book, I know what goes into reviewing something, and it's not just a matter of saying, okay, I finished the book, here are my thoughts.
Yep.
It's I finished the book, I need to reflect on this for a minute, I need to kind of sort through how I feel about it, what did I like the most, what did I not like, and so that you can give these very thoughtful, and they are very thoughtful, and I think very insightful reviews of the books that you listen to. So as Tom did a moment ago, I mean, applause to you both.
Well, and I think sometimes the reviews that are not as kind, right? The ones that aren't the 5 stars are, to me, as a writer, right? They're helpful, right? And because I'm hoping that each book I write is better than the last, and so I'm going to learn from them. I mean, I read pretty much every review that I get because I'm going to take something. I mean, some of them I don't take anything from, but most of the thoughtful ones I'm going to take something from, right? Exactly. Right. This is the worst thing I've ever read. No, I mean, there's some are very funny, but and you'll notice, Kevin may notice this in throughout the Traveler series, sometimes in a subsequent book, I'll reference a bad review, almost like as a joke. Like one character will say something to another character.
I've noticed
and it's actually from a review where someone says something, either positive or negative, and I'll have a character address that concern about the book by talking about it.
When Ellen Chang said to her husband, "You can't do that."
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh no!
As she died violently again.
As the snowdrift and the icicles kill her.
Yes, I'm having to figure out how she's going to die in Polar. I don't know yet. But it's funny because one of my very loyal, kind readers wrote me on day 1 and said, "Why do you hate Ellen Chang?" And I said, "I don't. She's imaginary." And people are convinced that she must represent somebody, but she doesn't. She doesn't.
All right. Well, do you guys listen to audiobooks? If so,
yes.
what do you guys like to listen to for fun?
Tom?
So I have a long commute. I live 45 miles from work. So the only chance I have to read, really mostly, is listening to audiobooks. Because I just, between my day job and trying to write 10,000 words a week, I can't do it otherwise. So I listen to, right now, actually, I'm listening to Thunderhead, which is book 2 of the Scythe series. It's actually like a young adult, but it's really well done by Neil Shusterman.
Oh,
Shusterman.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
It's got that really striking cover, I think.
Yeah, it does. And the narrator is good too. Who I apologize, I don't know his name, but really good. I've listened to a bunch of Peter Klein's books. If I'm pronouncing his name right, I think Ray Porter does his stuff like 14 and The Paradox Bound. I also just listened. I finished the most recent book actually that I finished listening to was Freakonomics.
Oh.
So I listen to a mix of things.
Did the author narrate Freakonomics?
The journalist that co-wrote the book with The Economist is the one who narrated it. And I think he's the one who does the show on National Public Radio. But yeah, so I just listened to that. My daughter's an economics major, so I thought I'll listen to this. Then that way I have something to just talk with her about.
Something to talk about, exactly.
Nice.
You could say, "Well, tell me about this." Yeah.
So.
By the way, it was Greg Tremblay. That's who narrates that series.
Yeah, it's really good. My son is the one who recommended Scythe, and so I downloaded, listened to it, really liked it, and I downloaded the sequel and just started. It's been on my phone for a while, but I just started listening to it. What about you, Kevin?
I tend to follow. I was before 2012, and this chapter of my life. You like that chapter of my life? Yeah. Before this, I was a voracious reader. Didn't listen to audiobooks. I read books, and I read them all the time. I had constantly 5 books checked out from the public library, and would read 3 a week probably, and 2 that I'd start and say, yeah, not that one. Let's go to the next one. So when I started doing this, it really took me away from reading books, because if I was to be spending time with a book, it was the next book I was going to be recording. So I'd have a book in production, but then it was time to get the next book ready, and I've got to read it. So that filled what had been my pleasure reading. It's still pleasurable, but it's not purely by choice. It's what's next in the work line. So I added into my routine. You said you've got a long commute. I've got a small dog, and the dog takes me outside for a half an hour twice a day, and I grab an earbud on the way out the door and turn on whatever audiobook I've got queued up. I don't finish everything I listen to, because I'm listening, I call it professional listening. I don't have to hear the whole book. I'm listening for the narrator mostly, and how they're working with the story, how they're interacting with it.
I'm going to use that.
Well, and for me it is. I can listen to an hour's worth of a book, and I can get a ton out of it, not what the author intended, because I'm listening to the craft, the art that's being done on the narrator side. But when I get hooked into one, and I do, I'll start this with the intent of not having to finish it, but it's like, yeah, no, you're going to be finishing this book, because George Goodell tells the story in such a way that I can't wait to hear what happens next. Or Dick Hill is somebody else that I'll follow. Is there another Dick Hill book that I haven't read? And of course, there's hundreds of them. So yes. And you mentioned Ray Porter with 14. I just think Ray Porter is amazing, and does the storyteller thing that I so admire. That it's just Ray Porter telling you a story.
Yeah.
This isn't, and nobody's reading me a book. This is Tom Abrams called me last night and told me this story, and then I am blessed with absolutely perfect memory, and I can remember the order of the words, and I'm going to tell it to you. And if that's a perfect world for me, that's the dream scenario. Is I'm not reading you a story. I'm not acting you a story. I'm just telling you a story. This is the story that Tom told me yesterday. And I think Ray Porter captures that in just an amazing way. So that's some of the reading that I'm doing.
I'm a fan of yours, but I feel the same way about you. So I put a book on and it's just like an old friend. I'm like, okay.
Well, good.
Kevin's going to tell me a story now, and then 8 hours later, I'm going to have to go find another Kevin story, except for it can't be another Kevin story because they all blend together then.
Yes.
One of the nicest compliments that I get in a review is not being mentioned. That somebody was just so enamored with this story and these characters and the plot and the way it all went together and the way it was all resolved. It was just amazing.
Because then you did your job perfectly. Yep.
Oh, I mean, yep. I did not insert myself in any way, shape, or form. It was just this. I still like it when you mention me. If you say my name. It still means a lot to me when you do that. But I love those reviews when somebody is just so absolutely over the moon about the story. And it would be an afterthought. Somebody would have to prompt them to say, "And how was the narrator?" And they say, "Oh, he was fine."
Mm-hmm.
Fine is okay with me. That's the T-shirt after "You can't do that" will be fine. He was fine. He's just fine.
Oh, so are there any questions you wish we would have asked you guys?
Ooh, Tom.
Oh, wow.
Right? I know, it's a tough one.
You know, it's funny because every interview, I think the best question an interviewer asks, and I try to ask it at the end of every interview, and usually the best sound bites come from it, is there anything else you'd like to add? And so, and the person almost always says no. And then they give me the best sound bite. I think you guys really touched on it. I'm just thrilled that you guys would ask me to be a part of this, and that you put me with Kevin so that we could talk about the books together, because it's really it's both of us. I know Kevin says he'd just as soon not be mentioned or thought of, that he just wants his words to convey the story. But I mean, I think the reason that our audiobooks sell as well as they do is because maybe it's my words, but it's his voice, and one without the other. Just like in TV news, you can't. I can write words, but if there are no pictures, it doesn't matter. So the same is true with an audiobook. If I write the words, but there's the wrong voice there or the wrong interpretation, then it fails. And I've been really lucky that I think all of our collaborations have I think been a really good joint effort.
It's a good dance team. I'm not sure which one of us is dancing backwards in high heels, but
That's you. That's you. It's the harder part. It's the harder part. I mean, to me, an audiobook, the voice and the interpretation are what makes an audiobook. It's why Paul likes Ray Porter so much. Notice he says I'm a big fan of his. He's not naming the authors who wrote the books that he voices. Right. And so a Kevin Pierce fan is going to like, they might like what I wrote, but they love the way you deliver it. And so it's harder in the audiobook medium. It's harder for the narrator, without question.
Hey, plug opportunity, warning you ahead of time. Audible has begun to recognize that there is some interest in the narrators, that it's not purely an author-driven medium. And I don't know how important the narrator is, but they have given some of us vanity URLs on Audible. So I have an Audible web address of audible.com/Kevin Pierce.
See, and I would have thought they'd have given you audible.com, he's just fine.
Or audible.com, you can't do that. Yeah. Okay,
no, that's Tom's page.
Yeah, that's Tom's page.
Right.
But audible.com/Kevin Pierce, and it's just a great way of saying, somebody says, "What's your website?" Well, you don't want to go to my website. Go to Audible, and there's everything I've done is all right there on display. So that was a nice little nod that they gave us, in the past few months, upon recognition of theirs, because of course they don't do anything that doesn't benefit them.
Right.
Audible said, there are people who are actually trying to follow a narrator or two, and we should make it easier to do that. So
I'm wondering who else has these. Now I'm just gonna Ray Porter have one?
Probably.
He does not.
Doesn't.
He doesn't. Well.
I have to get on the horn.
Well.
but
the way you said that with such confidence, it was like, yeah, he's got one.
Totally.
That was hilarious.
You probably misspelled it though, right?
He doesn't have. So our friend of the show, Joe Hempel, does not, but RC Braid does.
Well,
he just searched for Ray Porter, trying to prove me wrong.
I did. He doesn't have one.
So I'm going to prompt you while he's searching for Ray Porter again. I'm going to prompt you guys with a question that Paul absolutely hates.
Uh-oh.
Do you have any questions for us? I know you've already kind of started the interview. I know you hate it. But do you
I
guys
want to know where I want to know where you're both from. Where are your accents from?
I'm originally
Right ears.
from Erie, Pennsylvania, and I live near Buffalo now.
Okay, but Pennsylvania, your voice would be your accent would be from Erie.
Yep,
Okay.
20 some years from Erie. Yep.
Paul, how about you?
Born and raised Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay. I've got tons of family in Wisconsin, and when I get up there, I come back sounding like I've been on the set of Fargo. Okay.
Well, you must be going up north.
Okay. Yeah, we're up near Superior. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of accents, Escanaba in the Moonlight. Have you seen that movie?
No.
You got to see it. It's freaking hilarious. Everybody in the movie has a super thick Upper Peninsula Michigan accent.
Okay. I was born in the Upper Peninsula.
I believe it's Jeff Daniels, I think, playing the main guy, and it's just hysterical. So.
And I just narrated a true crime book about the post-conviction appeal for the Making a Murderer, Stephen Avery.
Yeah.
It all takes place around Green Bay and all the little towns. And I said, okay, I actually know how to say like 90% of these. And I'll ask for help on the other 10%. But I know where I am. I can do this. I can do Manitowoc. I can do Oconomowoc. I'm very comfortable with this.
Oh, that's awesome.
Tom, did you have questions?
Did you go to University of Wisconsin?
Me? No, I have a very complicated past.
That doesn't surprise me.
Tell us a little bit about that.
In my novel, yeah, that's okay. You can't do that. Hang on.
Paul's just gonna get a shirt, show up at his house, and said, "You can't do that."
I've already sent an email to my artist. I want to thank both of you guys for taking time out of your day to be on a show like this and talk to a couple of audiobook bums like us. Yes. So
Affliction, which is book 4 in the Alt-Apocalypse. The most recent one prior to that, I think, was Pilgrimage was most recent, right? That we know is out.
Yes.
Yeah, Pilgrimage is it was part of Kindle Worlds. It was 3 novellas that tell a single story. Put it together, took out some stuff that was part of Steve Conkley's world. He was real cool with it and relaunched it, and it did really, really well.
Yes, it is.
I think it's actually my 4th best-selling book. The audio's done really well. Kevin did a great job with it, and people seem to really like it. And then Affliction, we think might be out by now, and that's book 4 in the Alt-Apocalypse. So I will say, if it's out this week, Ash, the ebook, is free. So because it's free, that means the audio, if you don't want to use a credit, the audio is what, $7.49?
$7.50. Yep.
Yeah. So book 1 is a good way to get started. You can read them in any order, but book 1 is a good way. That's the other thing I did with the series, is you can read them in any order. But book 1 is $7.50.
Paul,
you can't do that.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah. I can't say it like you can say it, though.
And I would say for anybody who's listening and is not familiar with Tom, the Traveler series, starting with the book Home, which introduces us to Marcus Battle, it's a fabulous story, and it's absolutely one of my favorites. And Marcus Battle is without question one of my favorite characters. I'll die saying, well, Marcus Battle. He said that was a good one. That was good.
I like that.
Thank you guys.
Sure. No.
Go ahead, Tom. You were going to say something.
All I was going to say was, with regard to Marcus Battle, there have been people who said, what a stupid name for a character. So actually, in subsequent books, I think Lou in particular make fun of his name relentlessly about how stupid a name it is, because readers talk about how stupid a name it is.
That's great.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, guys, thanks again for
thank you
for being with us.
Best of luck on the 4th Alt-Apocalypse book.
Thanks. Hope you like it.
I can't wait to read it. It's my favorite subgenre that doesn't get written very often, so I'm kind of excited.
Which is
just like I call them like biothrillers, so just anything with disease and viruses. And so I was always like a Richard Preston who wrote The Hot Zone, and then wrote Cobra Event, and I also was trying to think of the other ones. I've got them. I own them all. Like Robin Cook does a ton of medical thrillers that are similar to that. There's always
Michael Crichton.
I mean, Crichton was kind of the reason I got into it. So but yeah, so that I'm intrigued because I know your style and I know the way the books are written, and you blew me out of the water with Torrent. I mean, Torrent made me. There were times in Torrent I wrote it in my review. I was literally like holding my breath because somebody goes under the water and in your brain you're like, oh, could I survive that? And you're like, nope, no, I couldn't have.
Well, so, and I wrote that after, I mean, I've covered a lot of floods, but was stuck on a freeway for 2.5 days during Harvey. And so, and I've been in floodwater up to my waist. And so, I mean, I think part of the reason that book maybe rings as true as it does is because when you write what you know, it maybe it resonates a little better. So
I'm going to give a shout out to your cover artist too. It's I'm going to butcher his name though. It's Risto.
Yeah. Risto Kavatliev.
Yeah. He does a lot of books in the post-apocalyptic genre, but I was looking at Torrent again and I was rereading my opening lines, and it was about how true the actual cover art was to the story. And I don't notice that all that often. And when I finished the story, I went back and looked at it. I was like, ooh, all right.
Yeah, he does a great job. I mean, he's wonderful. I kind of sometimes I'll give him specifically what I want, and sometimes I'll just say, come up with something. And I mean, he really does. He's so great to work with. Maury McDonald, who I mentioned earlier, he's the one who turned me on to him when I was going to do Home. And I had a different idea for Home and for the cover, and what he came up with was so much better than what I had in mind.
That's great. All right, guys.
I also said you cheated in that book, by the way.
What?
I said you cheated in that book a little bit too.
In which book?
In Torrent, because you wrote about a news reporter, an anchor. And I love the difference too. Even like the argument he had: "Am I a news reporter? Am I an anchor?" Like,
cheating. I did cheat. Well, and in Allegiance, in the Allegiance series, there's a reporter that runs throughout the series too. So.
Well, once you buy those back and Kevin narrates those, I'll listen to them. Or you convince your publisher to release them on audio. So.
Right, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, guys. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Super stuff.
Thanks again. Good night.
Good night.
See you guys.